And it's like I was just experiencing a vision or a scene from a past life where I was a Nazi soldier. And I could just see from my own perspective, like a almost like there were people below me, maybe in a mass grave or something, and they were pleading for their lives and crying um and begging for mercy. And I just mercilessly would just shoot them one by one. It's like there was no empathy, no feeling. It's like I was just doing the job. And going from that scene of that life, I was taken to this place that was just a dark place where I couldn't really see anything, but I heard a voice that said to me, "You have two choices. You can either choose to endure all the suffering you caused all of those people, or you can choose to not exist anymore." And the thought of not existing as myself was more terrifying than the suffering. So I said,
I wish to honor and acknowledge the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, from Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia, especially the Shipibo, Konibo, Laguni Queen, Tucano, Quechua, Ashaninka, and Quechua, as well as many other nations who have carried the sacred traditions of Ayahuasca or Yahe for countless generations. Their wisdom, courage, and stewardship of this medicine are the roots from which these conversations grow. May we remember that this medicine is not ours to claim, but is a gift entrusted to us, or in many cases extracted. May we move with humility, reciprocity, and respect for the original keepers of these ways. May the medicine of these conversations intoxicate, encourage, and inspire you to honor the indigenous peoples who are the respectful stewards of the Amazon and the medicine she births. Thank you, and enjoy the episode.
all right. Hi, I'm Melinda Molenda, and I first would like to thank the Indigenous tribes of the area where I'm located in Woodland Hills, which is the Gabrielino Tongva and the Fernandino Tataviam, who are the native peoples who inhabited this land. So giving gratitude. And yeah, so today I'm going to talk about my third night of ever doing ayahuasca, where I saw a past life. And it was about 6 years ago. And I had gone really, really deep um, into the medicine to where I completely didn't remember who I was in this life as Melinda. And it's like I was just experiencing a vision or a scene from a past life where I was a Nazi soldier. And I could just see from my own perspective, like a almost like there were people below me, maybe in a mass grave or something, and they were pleading for their lives and crying um and begging for mercy. And I just mercilessly would just shoot them one by one. It's like there was no empathy, feeling of no feeling. It's like I was just doing the job. And going from that scene of that life, I was taken to this place that was just a dark place where I couldn't really see anything, but I heard a voice that said to me, "You have two choices. You can either choose to endure all the suffering you caused all of those people, or you can choose to not exist anymore." And the thought of not existing as myself was more terrifying than the suffering. So I said, "I'll take the suffering." And then from that point, I was taken to this place of eternal suffering where it's like I could feel my body experiencing the most horrendous pain and torture, like I was being ripped alive or boiled and burned alive, but there was no end to it. It's like there was no death. It's like I would just go from one torture device to another, and then it's like these demonic entities were just like pouring it onto me. And it was so much that I would cry out for mercy myself, and I would say, "Is it over?" And it was just like, "No, more, more." And it just kept going, and I had no perception of time, so it's like it was just an eternity of suffering. And finally, I heard this chanting, and I looked up to where the chanting was coming from, and it's like I could see the facilitator, Yvonne, like, up in the corner, and he looked at me, and he reached towards me, and it's like he pulled me out of wherever I was, and then I was jolted back into my body, and he had his hand over my head, and he was, like, chanting something, and at that point, I remembered, I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm alive as myself, Melinda." And, um, and then I just felt this overwhelming feeling of just disgust and shame at this person who I was, and I was just screaming these guttural screams, and it's like I just wanted to be rid, like, I was just so disgusted by this person, and I didn't really have much of a recollection of that, but the next morning, I woke up and I was in a different part of the room. I had somebody else's blanket, and then Yvonne came and he lied down next to me and he held my hand and he said, "Do you remember what happened last night?" And I was thinking like, "Yeah, I remember," because I remembered my experience vividly, but there was so much shame. I didn't want to say anything about it. And so I like didn't say anything. He was like, "You were flailing about on the floor for a couple hours, and then after that, you were screaming for another couple hours." And I found out later that I had all the guardians around me, and they were all trying to keep my body safe because I was just like, I don't know, flailing and kicking and like rolling on the floor. I think I punched someone, have no recollection of it. They even had put a mattress over me to try to like calm me down. And then I had asked Yvonne later what he was doing whenever he was chanting over me, and he told me that he felt like whatever I was experiencing, I felt like I was alone, so he was singing in order to connect me to God, which, like, that checked out for me because I growing up in the church, I have had a lot of religious trauma, and so I didn't want anything to do with, like, God or the church or anything like that, and so, yeah, I had severed my connection to God, so I had this godless experience, and then, but then I was reconnected from that point, and during sharing circle, I don't think I even said much because I still had a lot of shame about this person who I was, and then I was like, "Well, was that really me, or could that have been me? Like, what was that?" And I was terrified to do ayahuasca again because I didn't wanna have another experience like that. But I did go back about a year later, and I wanted to ask the medicine, "Was this really me?" And I did, and I got an answer back. It was like, "Yes, this was you." And then I was taken back into this hell, but I wasn't experiencing hell, like, I wasn't experiencing, like, the suffering to my body or anything. It was more like temptation of these different, like, devils and demons or whatever. They were like, "Come back to our side, you know how it feels to, be part of the darkness," and they would, like, send me, like, these bursts of these endorphins, and they're like, "Oh, like, remember how it feels to, like, have that power," and I was just still so disgusted, and I was just like, "No, like, I don't want anything to do with that." And and I was yeah, and I kept going to those really scary, hard places, and I wanna say it was just, like, a continuous thing, like, every time I went back to ayahuasca, like, why did I keep going back? Because I did feel like it helped in my life, in my waking life as me, to just get rid of a lot of trauma and grow, and, there were a lot of benefits that I got from my self-esteem and having more self-love. But I would have these really challenging journeys of going to the underworld, and it's like I was I came to a point after, 10 or so underworld journeys where I was just like, am I going to have to deal with this again? Because I was still very afraid of this place that I would constantly go to. And then I was really afraid of having another journey because I was about to go to the Sequoia forest and do ayahuasca there, and I was so terrified of, like, being eaten by a bear. I just thought that was, like, the inevitable thing that was going to happen is that I was gonna get eaten by a bear, so I didn't wanna be, like, being eaten by a bear and then also be experiencing, like, this hell, like, at the same time, and I'm like, I hope I'm done with this underworld journey thing. But luckily in that ceremony, I had a really nice experience where it was like this spaceship that came down to Earth, and all of these little eggs floated down from the spaceship, and these little alien hatchlings, they looked like little chicks, and they were so cute, and they were just like this, and then they would be like and they would just eat all these scary entities that I had seen on all these underworld journeys, like all these, like, big, giant, ugly, parasitic beings that were feeding off of all of the Earth's negativity, and they were just like, "Oh, I eat you for breakfast." And I was like, "Well, that's nice." And it's like that message was telling me that there are people who have incarnated onto our planet now as humans who their sole purpose is to help. And so I was like, "Oh, thank God." Um, and then I didn't have, the scary, or at least it wasn't scary anytime I went to the underworld after that, but it's kind of become the norm, and I realized that I was kind of like, a student of it, where I'm just learning how this realm operates on pulling negative energy from all the negativity that, is caused by humans, and how I contributed to that in this past life, and how because of that, instead of having shame because of that person who I was, I now have this realization that since I was the monster, I am now able to be the same polarity or level of good in this life, and I can create the like, the same level of goodness as I created of pain and suffering because I had that experience, and so now, instead of something that I have shame about, I actually have a lot of gratitude for myself even as that person.
Wow. That is, you have some incredible visualizations. And I think it's important for the viewer, those who have maybe not have done ayahuasca and they feel called to understand that not everyone has visual as vivid as you have. And so these experiences are very diverse, and you're an individual that has some incredible visualizations.
Mm,
And it also feels like that you've done quite a bit of integration work around this because, as I've mentioned before in previous episodes, is that we are meaning making creatures, and that the meaning that we give to these experiences, how we extract the meaning, and then how we integrate, embody, and crystallize these meanings is very much the medicine. And so, what I'm hearing is that you recognized the intensity at which you created suffering and the human experience in this past life of being a Nazi soldier that lacked empathy and was just shooting Jews in the head with a gun and had no empathy. And now you recognize that in this life, at the polarity of an equal intensity, that you can bring love to this planet, to the human experience.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, what is that feeling for you when you recognize that person is not who you are and what your potential here is?
The feeling is I feel very empowered because power, when it's used in the proper integrity, can be used for good. And in that life, I was really seeking the power of, having, control over the destiny of these people's lives. And in this life, I feel empowered to bring goodness and to help end suffering for humans and non-humans as much as I'm humanly able to. And so that's really because of that experience and other underworld journeys, it's actually made me into um, being able to use my voice and find my purpose in life. I've done a lot of activism for animal rights. I'm an ethical vegan, which I have been for many years, but because of these challenging ayahuasca journeys, I started doing activism and I started being a storyteller. So I'm a screenwriter, and the TVs, movies, and creative works that I'm doing right now, they all have these messages that are meant to inspire change and to ease suffering and to inspire other people to want to create positive change in the world. So it's very empowering.
So I hear that you have embodied the message and have started using it moving forward, creating action steps, creating behaviors that allow you to align with the mission that you've interpreted from this experience.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we can go back into the experience a little bit and really kind of explore the textures and explore the feelings of being in that experience. Are you all right with doing that?
Yeah.
So, in the experience of being a Nazi soldier,
Mhm.
and one of the things that you mentioned was feeling a lack of empathy
Mhm.
and feeling empowered by recognizing that you had control over these other people's destiny. And when I say you, I want to make sure that we recognize that we are not speaking of the human incarnate Melissa Molenda, who is sitting in front of me today,
Mhm.
that we're speaking of a past life version that is not who you are today. So when you were sitting and experiencing that past life version, were there any other emotions that moved through you or internalized experiences of this character, of this individual?
Um, it was almost like the empathy um, centers were turned off, and it's like I was almost like I was numb, but beyond that, it was, like, entertaining to me. Like, I didn't even see them as human, like, it was just entertainment, and it was, like, something like, it's the job, but it was, like, pleasureful to me, which, like, in my life right now, that's why it was so disgusting to me because I was getting pleasure from causing these innocent people pain and suffering. Um, it's like it was something, like, satisfying in, like, a really gross way, but in that headspace where I was, it was just, like it was my way of just, like, entertainment, enjoying, and just, like a really like a almost, like, orgasmic enjoyment of causing, like, this pain to others. And
Oh, wow.
yeah.
And I think it's very important to recognize that when you describe this past version, this other persona, this other character, that you recognize that this individual dehumanized this group of people,
Mm,
right? And so had no empathy because this past life was able to recognize or not recognize, but was able to create a story that they weren't human. And then how in this life you are practicing vegan and an animal rights activist, which is a species or a demographic of beings, sentient beings on this planet who are consistently treated in this manner,
Yeah.
are tortured, are bred for the sake of their lives being taken without fully living a life. And, what we do know about backyard dog breeding is that if all the puppies don't move, they're killed in some of the most horrendous ways, from being thrown in bags and thrown into rivers to being hung, shot, crushed. And here you were, or in this space, recognizing that the consciousness of this individual was dehumanizing a group of people. And then in this life, the most dehumanized, which is, where the term comes from, right? Is we say these animals don't have sentience and you're a voice for them, recognizing that they do have sentience. And I don't know if you're able to see it, but there's a powerful thread right there.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, and that's why I am the way that I am and why I have so much empathy and compassion for humans and animals, because I see their suffering, and then having experience myself as this monster that was causing that, I do see the pattern and the correlation between what was happening then and what's still happening now. And the torture devices that they used to put the Jews through in concentration camps, they actually got the ideas from the animal agriculture industry, because they were already using gas chambers, and they still do nowadays. They still use these torture devices to kill animals, and they're so just made into just like things, product instead of beings. And I see that and I recognize that, and I really want to do everything I can to ease the suffering of these beings. And not only that, is because I have been the monster who caused so much pain and so much suffering, I even have compassion for the people who cause these suffering to animals. And I know that there is a possibility to change, even if it's not in this lifetime, but maybe the next lifetime. And that everyone who supports these industries of animal agriculture, people who consume animal products and who are buying into this horrendous industry of suffering, that they too can change and transform that energy from contributing to suffering to contributing to goodness and compassion and love. And that is possible for everyone.
That's incredibly beautiful. And I wholeheartedly stand behind that message.
Thank you.
And I recognize something that you said, that when the facilitator of the ayahuasca, of the medicine, felt that your experience was the experience of someone who in the moment was separated from God, sitting in a place of shame and disgust of the self, which isn't the self in this incarnation, but a past life self, that he felt called to sing over you, and that it brought you out of the deep experience of this past life version and allowed you to move back into your present self while still having a foot in the past life regression. And in your headspace, you interpreted it as chanting, and he was singing over you.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, what was that feeling like?
When he was singing over me, it
Yeah.
brought me out of the hell that I was in. It like retrieved my soul, like back in, it brought my soul back into my body, I felt like, because I was not even aware or conscious of myself whenever I was experiencing that. It's like I was just that person, and then I was in hell, and then I was like, oh wow. So actually gratitude, because I felt like so grateful to be myself and to not have to experience all of that pain and suffering anymore. like, it was like waking up from a dream or a nightmare, I guess. And you were just like, "Oh my god, I'm so glad that's over."
Yeah, I've heard some beautiful NDEs where individuals what were having experiences of the other side and interacting with guides and beings on the other side and being told that they needed to go back, and they could hear the prayers of loved ones standing over them praying or calling to them or speaking to them while in a coma or in a space of non-activity, and it was such a jolt that it pulled them back into their bodies.
Oh, wow.
And so when you mentioned that experience, it really resonated with the experiences of others
Mhm.
who are also out of their body. Something else that I really wanted to reflect on is when you mentioned these visuals of aliens that had descended and after doing integration work of recognizing that these are representative or symbolic of individuals who are here, who are helping the healing, who are supporting the healing of the collective consciousness. And these little beings were eating, these more negative energies. And and I really like that story, that interpretation. And I'm wondering, how long did it take you to come to that interpretation, to integrate that or embody that as your experience?
It was pretty quickly from it was if not during the experience or shortly after, maybe, like, the next day, it just all connected. Um, yeah, it was like I was seeing that visual, but it's like I had this realization. I was like, "Oh, there are people here who have incarnated to help." And, yeah, and then there was also this feeling of, like, because there are people who I know who are some of these helpers, and that I wanted to protect them and to keep it a secret, just let us do the job, and then they don't need to be known so that they can, do what they've come here to do.
And then the temptation part of this story really captured me. I found it captivating of numerous ceremonies in. And as you're doing the inner work and working through the experience and the trauma and integrating the meaning making and your numerous ceremonies deep from the original experience, and you're being called and asked to return to this former state of consciousness, right? Of sitting in these temptations. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on temptations and maybe what it meant in the experience or what it looked like in the experience, and if you recognize in the 3D human experience how these temptations might look.
Yeah, so in that experience, it was like I could see these entities or like these dark beings. It's like almost like, oh, here it is, like bringing it right in front of me, like on a nice platter. And it's like, oh, nobody else will know because in this dimension where we are, nobody else is aware of this. It could just be a secret. And you just like sign the contract here. And then it's basically you just go about being yourself, but you have it's like a deal that they wanted to make, and it's like they kept sending me, like, these rushes of, like, endorphins, like, "Oh, you remember how it feels? This is how it felt." And even though those feelings were like, they felt good, but it was, like, tainted with this, like, ick, and I just didn't want anything to do with that. And in my waking life, I see how there are a lot of people around me, because like most everyone, like eats animals and doesn't think that there's a problem with that. And it's like it feels good and it tastes good, but it's tainted with this ick that people don't realize. They're just like enjoying eating a meal. And yeah, and then in my personal life, like I really have to surround myself with community that shares my same values because I see so many people who, like, they start, their healing process and then they're like, "Oh, no, that's too much," and it's like they wake up and go back to sleep, or people who start going vegan and then they're like, "Oh, but, their plants feel pain, so it's okay." And then they just, like, go back because it's just, like, so common and it's, like, all around us, and there's a lot of really I don't know, there's a lot of terrible things happening in the world, and I think it's important to just have community to uplift and support you because even though I know that what I'm doing is right, it's like everyone around me, it's like, "Oh, no, this is okay." It's like so it's really, I know it's a challenge for a lot of people to hold this higher moral standard when everyone is okay with doing this really destructive thing, if that answers the question.
That answers the question beautifully. And what I recognize is that you're an individual who is sitting in values and morals, and it's backed by a level of integrity, and that you exercise the discipline, which means safeguarding these values through intentional community and doing the inner work. And the inner work is something that there are numerous different paths. And I recognize that you are using plant medicine, which is a path, and you might be using numerous other paths to recognize and understand what your values and your morals are, which transcend the human experience, right? Our values and morals are not comfortable. They're something that require discipline. And what I recognize is you are somebody who has found them and who is sitting in them. And having this ayahuasca experience, which is the polarity of who you are today, you're using that ayahuasca experience to anchor in even more deeply, root in even more deeply to the value system that you're safeguarding through community.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just that, made me remember there have been so many ceremonies with the medicine where it's about suffering or animal suffering, and I'm like, "Why are you showing me this? Like, I'm already vegan," and it's like, you could be doing more," and so I asked, like, "Well, how come you're not showing other people this message?" And she's like, "Nope, that's your job, like, that's your job to use your voice." And what she said was that, like, not everyone is ready to receive that message because people are on their different like, in different spots on their journey and, they have, like, other things that they're dealing with, and it's not the right time to be confronted with something like that. And so yeah, so that's the answer I got, and she also, like, not to sound, like, pretentious or anything, but she told me, like, "You're an advanced soul, and there are other humans who are, like, baby souls, like, they haven't incarnated on Earth for as long, and so they don't understand the concept of doing something for the sake of someone else that doesn't benefit you." Like, that's just unfathomable. So it's, like, a really big concept for some people, which, like, I don't understand because I feel like it's so simple. It's like, "Oh, if you can do something, like, maybe that it inconveniences yourself, but it'll help someone else, why not do it?" Especially if it's a life or death situation. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, and this concept moves throughout different spiritual philosophies that are ancient philosophies that touch on young souls and more seasoned souls who have incarnated numerous times and had these experiences or more human experiences. So there's not. only is there maturity in the human experience, but there's a level of maturity incarnation wise as a soul. And we have individuals that don't look like they are awaking or that they're shifting in consciousness. And there's some souls who will make very small steps in the jumps of consciousness in the human incarnation in a particular lifetime. And then there are other souls who will have massive jumps as they are disciplining and exercising and doing the inner work, right? And so I really love how ayahuasca has spoken to you about this really beautiful belief system. And I'm curious, who is Aya to you? What does she feel like? Have you
Um,
seen her?
I haven't actually, I did see a version of her that it was during an iboga ceremony where we had drank ayahuasca the first night, and then it was on the second night where we had just taken iboga, but I still had the ayahuasca in my system, I guess, and I saw ayahuasca as like this like light pink, but all these other different colors of like black and geometric like shapes, and she like floated across one side of my field of vision, and then iboga like kind of floated across the other side of my field of vision. He was like this primary color like block kind of figure, and they just merged together, and then I heard ayahuasca say, "I love you, Granddaddy Bobo." So that was like my one visualization of ayahuasca. So I think she has a sense of humor. In my experience, she was very scary to me at first because she's like this very stern, like, you're gonna learn a lesson type of, I felt like mama was giving me a whooping, kind of. Like, that's how she felt to me for a very long time. And yeah, and it wasn't until like more recently that I kind of felt the more soft side of her. The
And I'm curious for you, how much of this experience do you think is an entity that we call madre, that is a spirit of a plant versus our subconscious?
Mhm. uh I think it's kind of a balance of both because you are experiencing this plant, but you're experiencing it through your subconscious and conscious mind and your life experiencing and the way that you view the world. So, um, yeah, like how they say ayahuasca's a mirror that shows you like yourself. Um, yeah.
And how has your life changed since you've started using plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca, to explore yourself?
It's changed dramatically in the most profound ways imaginable because before I ever did plant medicine, I didn't even have any realization that like healing was a thing, like healing your emotional wounds. I thought it was just something that you deal with. Like I had some realization that I had trauma, but I'm just like, well, you know, you just life goes on and you just keep living. And but because I started doing plant medicine, I was able to shift my entire reality in so many different ways. Like, I used to have so much self-hatred for myself and would cause a lot of self-harm. I was on and off or, like, back and forth between being anorexic and bulimic for 15 years, and, after doing ayahuasca a couple times, that completely ended. And, I have such a deep and profound sense of purpose, which I didn't have before. I was always kind of like, "I don't know what I wanna do with my life. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that." But now I'm like, "No, this is what I'm here to do." Storytelling, plant medicine, and to shift the world and, like, raise the vibration of the planet to create peace and goodness and love. And it's yeah, I have so much love for myself, love for Pachamama, Mother Earth, love for all of the beings on Earth and everyone, even those who are perceived to be like evil or bad. I feel like everyone is human and we can all change for better or for worse. Yeah.
And how has life changed since you've taken a perspective of love, of self-love and love of other and non-judgment?
Mm. I take really good care of myself. I've completely changed my my body, my eating habits, my like workout. I've become a lot more fit and I've also yeah, I'm not as bothered by things that used to bother me and I'm more patient with people who don't understand my viewpoints and I've decided that I am going to use storytelling to spread the message to, or I am using that to spread the message and to inspire people to be compassionate on a mass scale instead of like this exhausting, like individual kind of like conversational thing that I mean, I still sometimes do, but yeah, I did that answer the question?
It sure did. It did answer the question. And you mentioned that you had had issues with anorexia and bulimia. And after doing plant medicine, ayahuasca, that you came out of that resolving that relationship with bulimic and anorexia. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, was there a pivot moment? Was there an epiphany? Was it slow and gradual? What was that like?
I think it was more slow and gradual because it took a few I think it was, like, after the 3rd ayahuasca journey, and I didn't really have a journey that spoke about that per se, but it's like it just I just, had a better relationship with food and with my body, and I just didn't feel like I needed to do that. I just had more self-control and self-love, and it just kind of went away. Yeah.
I want to repeat that back. I hear you say that as your self-love developed, that the relationship with anorexia and bulimia had faded.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I also hear that you mentioned that you had or have or had trauma around religious upbringing, and
Mm.
that this was reflected back in your ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm wondering if you would like to share a little bit about that because I'm very curious how you've been working through that, what that process has looked like, and if Aya has been guiding you in that.
Mhm. Yeah, I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian church in North Carolina, and, they were very into purity culture, which is like, you can't have sex before marriage, and then if you do, like, shame on you forever and ever, you're tainted and you're despicable, and so that brought me a lot of shame, and also being raised in the church and being indoctrinated in a way that makes you kind of hate yourself. It's like they teach you like that you're so unworthy of love, but there's this loving God that loves you even though you're so despicable and unworthy of love. And so that's something that I've really had to work really, really hard to believe that I'm worthy of love. And, um, and I've struggled with that a lot. That's probably, like, one of the biggest things just with being raised in the church and also, having a father who never really was loving, and I always felt like love needed to be earned. It was like a transactional kind of thing. And then also after going to that one mega church, we went to, like, a small church that it was, like, my dance teacher's church, and they were very controlling over me and my family, and yeah, and that just kind of, like I feel like it turned off my critical thinking skills and my ability to think for myself and, be able to discern when people are predatory, so that opened me up to a lot of situations in religious, settings where I was taken advantage of by predatory people, and also for a long time lacked proper judgment. Like, I thought people who were like wolves in disguise were actually like, I would just like think the best of people and give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And anytime a person would come into my life and my intuition would be like, oh, there's something off here, I would just be like, oh no, it's okay. Because like I would just make up some kind of excuse. And then it turned out like it's like I turned off my intuition. So I had to do a lot of work to reactivate that intuition. And now that's become a pillar of my being, and because of all these experiences, I've actually become really discerning of people and am able to, like, see through bullshit a bit better, and to not stay in situations where I could be, taken advantage of or harmed by a person. So I'm actually grateful that I had those experiences.
You had mentioned that ayahuasca and these ceremonies have supported you in self love and in resolving trauma.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, are you using any other modalities or methods to support you in doing inner work? Or is it solely plant medicine? What's that look like for you on this journey?
One of my, most helpful devices to help with healing trauma and, shifting my perspective is meditation, and so I think it's really important to have a daily meditation practice. Even if I can only carve out 15 minutes a day, I just make sure I do that 15-minute meditation, um, or if I have more time, I'll do, like, an hour-long meditation. I really like the Joe Dispenza meditations for breaking the habit of being yourself, which guide you through this whole process of getting rid of these negative beliefs and also envisioning your life in the best way possible. And so that's been a really powerful device with helping me heal, helping me integrate all of these lessons that I've learned from ayahuasca, and just, yeah, just becoming more and more healed.
And what does the integration process look like for you? You've done quite a few ceremonies as well as other plant medicines. And so for a viewer who maybe has done one or is feeling called to experience Aya, how important is integration work and what does integration work look like for you?
Integration work is even more important, I think, than the plant medicine journey itself, because if you just are going to ceremony after ceremony and expecting it to fix you, it's really not going to do that. You really have to put in the work to integrate these lessons. It's like whenever you do ayahuasca, it shows you the path, but then it's up to you to start walking that path. And different ways that I've integrated these lessons is through meditation is number one. In the beginning, journaling was really important because there was a lot to try and like grasp and making meaning of, and that helped me to kind of recollect my experience and remember it and to bring meaning to it. And then the other is community, having other people around you who support you in a positive way and who also share your, desire to heal and to grow. And so I think that those three are the most important.
Why do you think that the medicine ayahuasca took you into these underground experiences? I've never experienced the underground in any of mine, and I'm really excited to have more conversations with others in terms of underground past life regression. And I find it really interesting, and I'd love to hear your perspective as to why you think in this lifetime it was important for you to be shown your past life and this underground experience. And what do you think she was showing this to you for?
With the past life, experience, I think that ayahuasca wanted to show me the person that I was just to kind of solidify that I never, well, I mean, it's always your choice, but, it helped me to know why I'm doing what I'm doing and um, to remember who I was so that I can remember who I am and why I'm here and the mission that I'm here on this earth for. And then with the underworld journeys, I actually asked before, whenever I was seeing like all of this horrendous graphic visions of various things, I asked, why are you showing me this? And she said, because it exists and because you can handle it. And so I guess it's almost like, she sees this, like all of this terrible actions that people are causing on the planet, and she's there with that, and so I think that maybe she wanted to or wants to have someone who has the capacity to be able to be there in the suffering to see that as well, so yeah, because I feel like that's something that not many people are willing or able to look at.
And what do you think a bringer of light looks like? You've mentioned that the little aliens, the visualizations that you got were referencing these bringer of lights, these people who are here to help support, and that you know a few of them. And I'm wondering what, not physically what they look like, but what does it look like to be a bringer of light? And how do you recognize that they're showing up today in this modern life?
Mm. There are people who like to help. There are people who have a lot of compassion for other beings, and they are actively doing what they can to make a difference in the world through art, through different, I guess, activism, through yeah, they're doing things to help in various different ways.
So, as we're nearing the end of this, I'm very curious. Is there a message that you would like to share with any of the viewers who are feeling called to sit with ayahuasca, to sit with the medicine, and are feeling called to explore themselves on a deeper level?
I would say be humble enough to be able to look in the mirror and see the most ugliest parts of yourself and being able to recognize them because that's so powerful in order to shift that and turn darkness into light.
That is absolutely beautiful. I am so appreciative of your experiences, of your ability to interpret, make meaning, and to integrate them so that you can use them as a springboard to really be of service in this particular incarnation. I have gratitude that you are willing to share your story and be a voice of the medicine and to allow the medicine to permeate outward to support those who may be feeling called, those who may have just started their journey, or those who have no intention of doing the medicine at all, but find medicine in the stories of those who are participating in ayahuasca. So thank you so much, Melinda. I am super appreciative for you again, and thank you for sharing your voice.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.